Welcome to the 12 o'clock news, where we bring you headlines from competitive Overwatch. This week it is myself, Sideshow, and Harsha, and we're going to start off talking about the Apex Season 2 finals and the departure of Monte and DoA. And Josh, how do you think that resolved?
Well, what a final to start off with. It was absolutely ridiculous. The run from Runaway was fantastic all the way through the tournament. When you started seeing them perform in the playoff groups, you started getting a hint of what this team was capable of, but then they just slaughtered all the competition. If it had been a best of 3, the final, Runaway would have won. If it had been a best of 5, they would have won. But they just couldn't hold it together at the end and ended up being overtaken by Lunatic High. Well deserved in the end by Lunatic High as well, but it was probably the best game of Overwatch that I would say definitely the best game of Overwatch that has been in terms of the excitement, the storylines, the actual importance of the match as well. And I think it'll be quite a while until it's beaten.
And I think regardless of whoever won, this would have been like a very awesome finish to the tournament, I guess, because you have Runaway, who's like the team that was in promotions, I believe, last season, and like they rose all the way to the top, and like huge underdogs, yet they were. At one point, they were in a position to win this, and then Lunatic High, the team that's finished like second in 2 major lands, and then obviously like the whole meta shift thing happened with Apex Season 1, so they fell out right as soon as the group stage hit. So like this was kind of like an appropriate crowning moment. I know a lot of people have been pushing the whole, finally crowning the uncrowned kings thing, and I think one of the things this does like bring to light though is the effect of fatigue on pro players, especially because this was a best of 7, not like a best of 5 or a best of 3. And I know Runner from Runaway was talking about how basically after those first 4 games, the team was just like exhausted because they hadn't been going to the gym and conditioning or anything like that, much like you, Mr. Sideshow.
What do you mean? I'm at the gym all the time. That's how I'm able to produce such a amazing consistency, with you need that gym life. I don't know what I'm talking about. Never touched a gym in my life.
Remember, the consistency can mean multiple things. And we'll just continue.
The best of 7, I think, kind of fits Apex because they make it all about that one game. Like that day, they produced loads of filler content in the middle as well, which was hilarious. Again, it was absolutely brilliant. I'm kind of a little disappointed they didn't bring out the Jenga again, because that was amazing when we saw NVS do that. But the whole thing where they were doing the karaoke, and also the thing where they just give a microphone on a stick and go produce the loudest noise, like that's brilliant shoulder content. That's actually fantastic. But that's got to play into it as well, because that adds like an extra 2 hours into the whole thing, because you've got constant breaks, and then there was a pause after the second map as well, or something like that. So in general, I'm not a big fan of best of 7s, especially because games can go to draws, but maybe not anymore. there are no draws.
Not anymore.
But I think best of 5 would be reasonable for a tournament that size as well, but best of 7 works within the context of Apex, I think.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned the draws. Let's talk about that change a little bit. I think there's been some outcry from the community about the update actually going by percentage of point capped instead of the actual ticks. Because if you look at, obviously, when you're capping the point, there's different tick marks for how far you get it, and it can't be uncapped beyond that point. But now it's off of pure percentage, which opens up the opportunity for some cheeky back caps, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. And I've been personally advocating for at least testing out like you mentioned, using ticks as the marker instead of like straight percentage, or even using like you could change the tick system to have like 4 instead of 3, or even 6. I think was what I said. But like in general, winning by 1% feels kind of bullshit. And I know they were trying to remove ties in general, but like this has gone too far, I believe. And like the thing about this is you can't. On a lot of maps, you don't actually want to position the defense on top of the point itself. You want to be on the high ground or something like that. Now you're kind of forcing the defense to give up like their optimal position, and then just put them in a position to lose the next fight, just because maybe there's 1 or 2% from actually losing the map.
Here's the thing, like I haven't watched the games that happened today to just to give some context to what I'm saying, because I believe it did come into effect with the Misfits Dignitas game. I was just about to watch that before we started, but yeah. I think there was something that happened there that was quirky with the overtime. But I In theory, I quite like this change in that I think draws are just one of the most ridiculous things in Overwatch. Because you can have a game that goes on Hanamura, and the whole object of this is that there's been some kind of map veto or loser's pick or whatever to take it to Hanamura, and then both of the teams draw, which is a fairly likely conclusion of professional like 2CP maps, and then it ends up being like who's the best on Nepal to be able to decide who took Hanamura. In what way is that fair or reasonable? I think that's a kind of ridiculous that that's the case, rather than, I mean, APAC, I think it was, you had to replay the map, which obviously makes like draws far less common, but means that people going back to like the fatigue. Numbani was played something like 2.5 times or something in one of the series. But in general, I hate draws in this game. I think they're just not even a necessary evil. Like there should be ways of being able to remove them, and I'm all for that. And I don't really understand, and this is probably me not having a full like appreciation of how this rule changes things. What's different about this compared to payload, where you can just cap it by like 10 centimeters and that gets you the win?
Yeah, I guess that is a fair point. I feel like the thing about payload is that, put it this way,
you can physically see the card. You can physically see where that is happening.
I've
been that a slam dunk in the game.
I think honestly, I always had a problem with ties as well, because I think Face It put it best. There are no ties in competitive play. And in games like CS, it's acceptable because their tiebreaker is actually quite reasonable. It doesn't take a ton of time, and you don't have to really like leave the server and deal with something else. Even in TF2 with Golden Cap, it's not that ridiculous, although those can drag on extensively depending on the teams, but it changes the game. But you're on the same map, you're playing the same game, nothing really changes that much. Whereas in Overwatch, like, you're jumping into a completely different game format when you do this, and like you said, it's just kind of obnoxious to just be like, oh hey, we're just gonna do one map on Nepal. Like, it's a good way, it's a fixer, like a stopgap measure that is a good idea. But yeah, it should be built into the game that there are no ties, because there should not be ties in a competitive game. Like that's the whole point of competition, is to figure out who's the best.
Here's some other ways though that I think they could do it. Like you could have it be based on the tick system if people dislike the way that the actual percentage works, or you could have, so instead of on assault maps, the way that it just locks out at a certain point, if both teams draw at something like 2-2, you could just play like another round of the time bank as well, just until one team gets a lead. Like you don't have to replay the whole map again. You just replay the time bank until a team gets a lead, and then it's whoever actually gets the lead ends up winning. And you could do that same kind of thing with payload as well, where it's just you run the attack again, but if one team gets further, then they're gonna win it, like in terms of whatever metric you define. But Harsha, I've given you a while. Have you come up with a counterpoint to why like the?
No, this is. I mean, it's not an argument I actually considered. I think that is a fair point. Obviously, I do think there are a few differences though, in that like in payload you're generally going to be setting up on the like near the, or like around the payload in general. Like, put it this way, you can just put your Reinhardt there and it's not as big of a deal. Whereas I think in 2CP, pretty much no point has you setting up on top of the point itself as like the standard. So I guess that's my biggest gripe with it. It kind of forces defense to take like a very, very bad position at like almost all times if they ever fall to like if they're ever close to being overtaken.
I also think you need a fairly obvious visual cue, because we have those visual cues in payload that make it a lot more simple. Whereas like as you're getting used to a percentage system, you want something big and obvious that's telling you like, hey, you're gonna lose the point.
Yeah, you're just about to lose literally your entire game here. Please step on the point. I can see definitely, because it's a static thing and it's not moving forwards, and in general the fights, I mean, on a lot of points they do kind of happen around the point, but it's more fluid, isn't it? Like on a lot of maps you'll be positioned around the point and baiting teams on to attack it, and then you'll be doing damage to them as they give up their position. You don't tend to actually have death ball fights clashing on it in the same way you do with the payload.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit, since we're discussing the patch, let's talk a little bit about the Lucio changes. Obviously, those had a bit of an impact on the tournament today. How do you guys think that factors into... I mean, one of the arguments that I heard was, you know, hey, Lucio is getting picked all the time. Let's nerf him by giving him a buff. What do you think about that mentality?
It's really weird. I actually don't know what to think about Lucio because here's the thing. From my point of view, Lucio was already the most difficult. From somebody who only watches top-level games, I'm not a top-level player. I don't very often speak to pros about this kind of thing as well, though I think I will do for this Lucio one. I'm mostly basing all of my analysis from watching games and like seeing what's on the screen and seeing how the players are interacting and what ends up working for like over the most often. And Lucio's not a character that frequently gets screen time. It's not somebody that you can easily see the heals that's coming out of them, like Anna, you can very easily see like the impact that she's having on the game. Lucio is just like this trickle aura in a huge zone, and you can't really tell easily from looking at the game what kind of impact he's having very easily. So it's something that I feel is way more in the realm of the players to tell me what the hell is going on with that, because at the moment I'm almost clueless as to what this will change, because so far from the pit tournaments it doesn't actually seem like tanky comps are having more fun with it.
That's my biggest, I guess, confusion with this whole thing is that people are talking about how this is just going to bring back 4-tank, like, death ball comps because everybody wants to be near the Lucio. But, like, in pit, we've still seen dive, and it's still... I mean, Dignitas ran it, I think, fairly well today. They, I mean, obviously, they beat Misfits, they beat Ninjas in Pajamas. I thought they looked very good with dive, and... Obviously, it's going to be taking away the speed boost from, like, the Winston, the Genji that are jumping in. But, I don't know. It hasn't looked particularly effective on the meta yet. I think we're going to start seeing, like, we'll start seeing different things as the meta develops more. Sorry, but
yeah.
I mean,
Forsaken was playing Torbjorn on first point Route 66 instead of playing Lucio, which ended up working out for him. But I don't know whether that was anything to do with the actual Lucio change or just whether he thought, like, go for a Hail Mary. I don't want to play Lucio when it's in this condition, so we're just going to throw out a Torbjorn. And the other team was like, the hell is a Torbjorn doing at the beginning of Route 66? And he melted them. It worked really well, actually.
Didn't they buff Lucio's gun by like 25%?
Yeah,
something ridiculous
it does.
like that?
Yeah,
that sounds like it makes it more fun to play. I mean, well...
It probably does. If you take into account like the speed boost off the wall and stuff, I think another thing that you might end up seeing as well is that there'll be a more of a difference in terms of ult time to generate ults as well, because when you have a hero that very passively generates his ultimate, most people just tend across the board to get it fairly evenly. But if you have somebody like Zarya or a Reinhardt or something, where the base level is pretty low, but if you do damage, you can get it up super high. Like Zarya's charge Graviton so quickly when they're at 100 energy compared to when they're at 0, obviously, because they're doing tons more damage. So if your Lucio's been buffed, maybe there'll be a bigger differential between the people who aren't playing Lucio as well and the people who are. Maybe it'll end up being like a higher skill cap. I'm really grasping at straws here, though. I've got to say.
It would be cool to see, though.
Well, I think what would also happen is that essentially tank comps would get sound barrier like far more often than dive compositions, because they're going to have all these heroes within the 10-meter radius. That
is that how that actually works? Because when I've seen teams sound barriering, it seems to go outside the 10-meter radius.
No. So what I mean is that it does still go outside of the 10-meter radius. But what I mean is that Lucio will be passively healing people within the 10-meter radius. So like tank compositions are more likely to stick together, whereas dive will be like farther apart. So he won't be able to heal the Genji, the Winston, the Tracer passively, but he would be able to heal, like, say, Zarya, Roadhog, Reinhardt, all when they're like grouped up. Is more or less what I mean.
So the concept was to kind of stop those dive comps from utilizing these Lucios effectively.
I honestly think it wasn't even to do anything about the metagame. I think it was just to make Lucio more, I guess, feel like he has more agency in the game. I don't know. Because he just kind of feels like a passive, like, speed heal bot. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's my other thing of theory crafting, which I think could have some merit to it. I think this may end up having the opposite read of what a lot of people are going for, in that your dive composition in general. Were they even playing within the 30-meter radius? Were they even getting this trickle charge on your players who are diving deep?
30 meters is very, very big.
Is it ridiculously large? All right, okay. Because what I was thinking was, if your players are diving in anyway and then returning to your Lucio whenever you're getting heals, and they're getting now 30% more heals whenever they return, does that in some sense like give them a faster regen for those low HP characters who are then going to like return to your backline and then be able to dive in again? And the opposing team who they're diving into any bit of spam is going to be much more impactful because they're not slowly getting trickle healed up. So you can just spam across the board, and all of that spam is now going to have much more impact, it seems.
See, I thought that it was more an issue of the speed boost, being able to get them through those choke points more quickly as a cohesive group. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit, speaking of Pit, let's talk a little bit about what happened this week. Josh was casting with Jamerson, and the servers went down on Monday, and then they went down again on Tuesday for the update. It was really interesting to see kind of how that was all handled, because it was a little odd that, like, the update came out and it kind of seemed like, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen kind of feel. I don't know. It was a little odd. Because I was trying to speculate this morning, like, how did this happen? Because if Blizzard told them, right, then why would you schedule a tournament during when you know there's going to be an update? And then obviously we had the leak of the French video showing the new skins and saying this is going to come out on the 11th. Do you know the exact time it's going to come out? But you've got 2 full tournaments scheduled that day. It's going to fall on one of those, right? But do you reschedule all of it? I mean, I don't know. It seemed like a really weird situation to me.
So I haven't actually talked to Josh about this, but I imagine, because from like prior experiences and like hearing things from other tournament orgs, I think Blizzard probably told Pit about what was going to happen on Tuesday. I'm not really sure why this wasn't rescheduled. I think, like, clearly it would have disrupted the rest of the tournament, but, like, I don't know, losing one day of streams wouldn't. I don't think it'd be that big of a deal. I think it would have helped the tournament run better in the long run. I thought this was, like, particularly bad because it happened during playoffs, not even during group stage. Like, these are the matches that determine, like, you know, where people are actually placing. So
who gets the money?
Yeah, who gets the money?
I obviously can't speak on behalf of the admins of the tournament or on Blizzard, but here's my read on it, and it is, you know, I'm not a shill, but it is more slanted towards the tournament organizer, because I've run tournaments before in something like TF2, and when I see these guys, like, in they've set their schedule out, and then there's suddenly something that they have to work around, no matter what it is, because in TF2 it used to always be like DDoSing or some server issues or something, and you'd be like, for Christ's sake, man, did it really have to happen?
Down.
Yeah, or just some random stuff, and thankfully Overwatch doesn't have any of that. It's got a much cleaner infrastructure, but definitely updates. But I see these updates at the moment in this period of Overwatch's life and this, like, level of tournament as just unavoidable. It's just like an unavoidable thing. They have to push out updates like this at peak time so that they hit, like, their player base, and it's a huge casual update, right? Like, for their fun-loving PvE kind of really cool.
It was a fun mode. Yeah,
but then they can't avoid tournaments. I know for a fact that there are going to be more and more tournaments coming up over the next, like, thing, and they can't avoid them. The only solution to it is some kind of tournament realm, I think, and they've, like, Apex was reportedly on one. It was definitely on one. I don't know why I'm saying report. On one. We literally should be on one. But that's a huge tournament. I don't think you can expect that for, like, a 15K online tournament, even if one was readily available. And the developers have said that it's being worked on and is going to be a thing in the future. I don't even know then whether it would be a priority for them, because this is a fairly low-scale tournament and it's all happening online. Like, that's more of a consideration if you've got a big LAN, like a major happening. You don't really want something dropping in the middle of that. But I think it's just our perspective is so, like, focused on this tiny tournament because we haven't had anything else, that we're kind of expecting things to just be the smoothest possible. And another point to make about this as well, Sammy, is that it didn't really disrupt that much. Like, it only happened, like, one game got ticked over to the other day, then they played it, and then they played the other one, and then they couldn't play the last one, and then that game just got ticked over. So it's still smooth. Like, it's literally back on track today.
I think seeing the way that Blizzard kind of comports themselves when it comes to tournaments, it's just surprising that they don't just say, hey, here's the day we do updates. Don't do tournaments on this day. I mean, they run the schedule. They decide who runs tournaments and when, because they have complete and totalitarian power over everything in Overwatch right now, right? They are the I'm not thinking the word. They're the Riot of you know, Overwatch.
Oh, gross.
They decide everything.
That comparison.
And if you have that complete control over who plays your game and when, right? You can't just say, like, okay, like, this is the day we're doing updates, just don't play games on this day. Like, because it's got to be embarrassing for them, because it looks like the ball was dropped somewhere, right? So when this happens, you know, it's got to be embarrassing that they're just like, oh, well, you know, there are only 11,000 people watching, it's no big deal.
To be fair, though, if it had just been the update and they hadn't run into like unforeseen server issues,
Right.
then it would have been fine.
Unless you have potato internet and you got to sit there for an hour and a half.
But that's the thing, though. There's always server issues during patches, like right after big patches, especially when it's like an event.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to like that. I mean, I don't know. All right.
Well, okay. I just want to make one more point.
Okay.
The other weird thing about this, I thought, was that like basically you've teams from basically the same round qualifying for the next round of the tournament on different patches, which I mean, unavoidable, but like I think you could have scheduled around that better.
We'll see how game-breaking those balance changes are, though.
Yeah, it's a bracket as well. Like where do you cut it off? If you have to have some played on one and some played on another, then it's like I don't know. If a patch is going to drop in the middle, like, is there even a better time to drop it? I don't know.
We got lucky because our patch came and it was like an optional thing, like the changing of the maps and the adding of Orisa and stuff like that was all stuff that we had direct control over because we were using arcade mode. So it was a lot easier for us to just say, well, we can keep it standardized. We don't have to add Orisa and we don't have to add all these extra maps. We can keep it the same so that nobody has to deal with these changes in the middle of the tournament. But you can't do that with the game mode as it is now. Because you can't just be like, oh, we'll just revert the changes to Lucio and let them play the old one, you know? It's not possible, so I don't know. What have we not talked about yet? Let's discuss Rogue and NRG being invited to Apex. This has been greeted with surprise and some sort of opinionated responses in the competitive community as Rogue, I think, very deserving. I think everybody agrees Rogue deserves to be there. Rogue has been doing very well in the North American scene, even though they're all French. And the surprise really more so came from the fact that NRG was invited, considering they haven't played since 2016. And they've got, you know, half a new roster, and no one's really seen them play. The reports we've been hearing from scrims, from the articles I've read, are not favorable. So nobody really can sort it out other than, you know, they're quite popular and everybody wants to see them play. What do you think? Harsha?
Yeah, go on. You wrote the article.
Well, I mean, I thought about it for a while. Like, when I first heard the news, I was like, really? Like, but, I mean, the more I thought about it, you know, OGN is a media company, like, first and foremost. They want to bring in the most viewers. And the thing about this is these aren't bad players, you know? Like, all of them are very, like, high-level players. I think they all have LAN experience. All of them have. So all of them have LAN experience. I don't think it was that terrible of an invite. And you also have to consider that Immortals declined their invitation. And I believe I heard later on that after I published this that Envious had received an invitation, like, but it was on too short of notice basically, and they just didn't want to go back to Korea. And so, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal, honestly. I think the community's gone really overboard, and I think like people are calling out like Siegel, telling him to personally decline this invitation. And, like, I think that's
ridiculous.
I think that's ridiculous. Yeah.
That's just the kind of people
that
they just sit there scrolling through Reddit, waiting for something to scream about. These kind of people, they're like I'm really in the mood to scream at someone today. What can I get angry about?
That sounds like Reddit.
It's mad. But here's my biggest issue with it, and in general, I kind of agree with you. Like, it's certainly not the best team that you could invite, but they're a strong group of players. They could actually be a reasonably good team. I'd like to see them perform perhaps before they get an invite to something like Apex, which I consider to be like the most prestigious tournament that's currently running. But at the same time, other people declined. So, I mean, they're going down the list. It's not like NRG was like, I'm instantly going to invite NRG. Bring them over. So
I don't know. If you're going down the list, Josh, where are they on the list?
Yeah. But,
well, I mean, there wouldn't be that many people before you thought of NRG. If you've already got Rogue and you want NA teams.
Well, for content level, I agree with you. For content level, they're the best you can get because everyone's going to want to watch that. That's going to be so exciting to watch because no one's seen them play in so long. So I'm actually, like, the reason I was really excited is like, hey, I get to see them play. But that's the highest level of play you can get.
But see, the other thing about this is they've been very adamant about doing like half NA, half EU when they invite the foreign teams, and they consider Rogue and Envious, like the European teams in North America, to actually be European. Mm-hmm. Like Sideshow, it makes them very happy. I mean, like, if you're gonna go through NA talent, you have Immortals, you have LG Evil, and you have Selfless. Selfless, not a big org, not a team that has like a fan base in Korea. Like, I mean, just absolutely none. LG Evil, all college students like can't just drop things and go over there. And Immortals, obviously, like having the burnout, so they're taking a break. I don't know who else is like. Yeah, you could say that NRG haven't played, but like it's not like all these other teams are just amazing. Like,
yeah, that's where the cutoff ends for like the tier 1 in domestic North American talent, right? And then it's kind of wide open. NRG reasonably could be as good as the top end of the next people. That's like Liquid, FaZe, teams like that. So they reasonably could be at that level, and that's which makes it not that bad. Here's the thing, though.
I mean, it would be great to be represented by a team that does well.
Right, but here's the thing. NRG have got no results so far, and they've just accepted an invitation. They've literally asked to get smacked around the head for 3 months. They've literally asked to make themselves look terrible for 3 months. It's unbelievable from like a...
Doesn't anyone that sign up for Apex do that? Like, hey, come to our country and let us beat you here, and you can have good food while we kick your ass.
It's mad, though, from like a PR point of view, I think, because... Yeah, they get the attention from being in Apex, but they say any publicity is good publicity. But if you're getting wrecked 3-0 in every group, is that actually good publicity? Or do your fans then just write you off as a shit team? Even though if you were playing in NA, you might actually be a good team. So I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure they have the, like, even if they were a good team, like a promising team from their roster, and they ended up being like top 5 NA, something like that, that's probably not good enough to go and compete in Apex. And if you get smacked around the head and then you're not able to, like, compete with other teams and you come back and you're a little bit burnt out, that's a net loss for your team, I think.
I mean, I just assume their priorities are different, and maybe they've thought about it from a different angle. I mean, I can't really say how the org feels about it.
They'll come back and they'll play an Owl, and then everyone will forget about it because they're like the most popular team in Owl, so it'll work out perfectly fine for them.
All right, well, let's discuss a little bit about, we were talking about rankings. Let's talk about your world rankings, Joshua. What is...
Not just mine.
Not just yours.
His first edition that was received incredibly well.
But yeah, probably because it was utterly inarguable, the top 5 spots going to Koreans. Like, that's the only reason that people didn't argue, is because they couldn't. It was laid on a platter before them.
That makes it a little easier.
It's literally the OGN standings at the end.
Well, it has to be as well. Like, there are reasonable ways that OGN could have played out where the top teams didn't actually end up like sorting themselves out in that exact order. For example, if Runaway had made had beaten them at the end, then Lunatic High, if you probably within this time period, you would still say that Runaway are like the second best. But if you extended the time period, if you were going back to December as well, like if you added another month backwards, their performance at IEM Kangi would probably still boost them into the first position. And a team like Luxury Watch Blue as well has like proven that they are at the top, even if they had then lost to Meta Athena. I think I would still place LW Blue above Meta Athena in that position. It just so happened that OGN's like double elimination playoff group format was very good at sorting out the teams. Like you had an opportunity that if the 2 best teams came out, they went through the finals.
Which, might I add, that double elimination is very good at doing.
Yeah, it's very good. Which is why a lot of teams love it, and it was a great addition to Apex. I hope they have it again, because that format was excellent.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, last but not least, the changes to C9 is a little bizarre.
Spicy.
So spicy. So Rib and Mendo have left Cloud9, and they've picked up Selly and Xepher, who are Korean players. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, so technically Mendo and Rib are currently on Cloud9, but benched.
Yeah.
I think Mendo right now is he's like playing as a substitute for his brother's team, actually. And I believe like if they ever find a 6-man, he's just going to coach them for fun, I guess. I mean, I think it's funny that people bought the whole I can't leave Sweden until I fix my teeth. Like, that was a funny story.
That was mad.
And people are getting downvoted on Reddit for suggesting that Mendo might not be playing with Cloud9 anymore. But you know, it turns out
the writing on the wall was there, and people were like, "Nope, it's his teeth."
Hey, if I could get my teeth done with socialized healthcare, I would do it.
My problem with this roster is that I've already heard that Cloud9 is a particularly like quiet roster. I've heard that Rolf is a big voice, but like I've heard otherwise it's a pretty quiet roster from like teams that have been with them, players that have been with them, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if adding 2 Koreans that don't speak English necessarily well helps that. In fact, I could probably guarantee it wouldn't help that. Obviously, these are 2 very talented players, so I don't know how it's going to go. The other strange thing is that Gods is now on main tank. I feel like that's just setting him up for failure.
To be honest, like, have you ever seen him play main tank? Do you have any idea?
I've seen him play Winston on stream.
Okay.
I don't know how that goes. He did play so back on NRG this was a long time ago when he was struggling. Like, I remember there's this period of time where people were calling him inconsistent. He wasn't doing very well on McCree and Tracer. What they did was they stuck him on Winston pretty often, and sometimes Zarya, and then Enigma was starting to play, Overlord Enigma was starting to play more of the Tracer role. So it's not unprecedented, but I don't think putting somebody on Reinhardt, like, it's just setting them up to fail when they haven't been playing Reinhardt against like top-level Reinhardts for such a long time.
I'm going to reserve judgment before I say that like moving Gods to Rein is a potentially bad move, because there are people who've moved over from different roles and been able to pick up tank pretty
for sure.
Pretty well.
Numlock was a support, wasn't he?
He was a tank.
He started on tank, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But for sure, if you have a good understanding of the game, then I think Reinhardt and Winston, you can end up getting a good flow with your team and being able to get it. I don't know. This whole roster is really weird for me as well. Just there's so many things that we don't know about it. For example, how good are the English skills of Xepher and Selly? And is that going to be something that Bishop's able to help them with? Or are they already at a good level? Like, if they spoke English as well as Bishop did, you wouldn't even be able to tell they were Korean. So, but I assume they're not the same as Bishop in that they spent half their life living in the US. So there's going to be a difference there. Also, their like individual performance. Xepher has been noted for a while as being a very good player. He isn't really able to play in Korea because he was involved in the whole Gaguri scandal, which I just think is kind of ridiculous on both sides. But that's just ended the careers of quite a number of people. And I think in a way it's quite nice that Xepher's able to move over to the West where the standards aren't quite as high, should we say, and he's able to find success in like a fairly large team. Selly, I have never seen him play as well. I haven't watched many of the Challenger games. He used to play for Rhino Gaming Wings, right? So
yeah, I've heard he's actually a McCree god, but I mean, if we haven't seen him play, we have no way to judge that, I guess. I don't know. It's just weird to me that I think that Cloud9 is investing in Koreans so early, but I do think that with Bishop, at least if there was a team to do it, it has to be Cloud9.
Yeah, definitely. He'll understand how to work them into a system for sure. And as long as the communication issues aren't a problem and they are actually good players, you could kind of put some. There are quiet players, right, in other Western teams that probably speak as much as a foreign player would anyway, and there are teams that have language barriers anyway because they play in English and they communicate in English, but they're like a mixture of different international talents. So I don't know. I'll reserve judgment on this team until I see them in a tournament, which I believe they're playing in at the end of this month, right?
Yes, on the 22nd or something like that.
Right.
Rival kid.
Well, let's wrap up the episode with a little bit of juicy speculation. Monte and DoA have left Apex to work for the Overwatch League. When do you think, based off this news, we are going to hear more about the Overwatch League?
Presumably over the summer, I would say. I don't think. Well, okay. So put it this way: summer does last from I guess May to, we'll say, July.
It's been summer here for a month, mate. Like,
okay, it's always summer here. So we'll get off that. I think they are coming here as advisors, right? Like they did say they're going to be advising Blizzard in these matters. Like
they're contracted; they're not like actual employees.
Yeah, so they're going to be, and they did make this very clear. They're going to be freelancers. They're never going to be salaried employees of Blizzard. And they think that like you need to have that impartiality to be a good caster. I definitely agree, especially seeing like the pit situation. I could see how this would turn into like a whole mess basically. But I think this means that they're going to be talking with Blizzard a lot over the coming month or so. So probably, I'd say maybe we see stuff around the end of May. I mean, I have no idea. This is just my guess.
Wild speculation.
Yeah.
That's all. Just for fun.
if I had to speculate, I think as soon as they start opening things up to other organizations in terms of the bidding process and letting them know what's going to happen, this is going to be like pouring all of their information into a colander that leaks out all over the floor. So I think we're definitely going to hear information sooner rather than later in terms of leaks from organizations bidding, or they're trying to contract certain parts of like qualifiers or the combine out to people and they end up leaking information about it, stuff like that. So in terms of official announcements, they tend, it seems, to wait until all their things are in order before they actually announce stuff, like the World Cup. You know, they kind of seemingly announced that suddenly, just out of the blue, but obviously they put a lot of work into organizing it and making sure that they can follow through on quite ambitious promises. So yeah, in terms of official announcements, perhaps not, but I expect the leaks to precede that.
So one thing about the whole leaks thing is Blizzard has been very, I guess, open about talking to pro sports teams instead of esports teams. I do feel that sports teams have more of an air of professionalism to them and aren't, I mean, they're not owned by like 25-year-olds, right?
Well, and they're signing non-disclosure agreements. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That is definitely enforceable.
Esports is the it's the easiest
right,
place to
here's
get.
the other thing though. You're selling all these spots to really big, powerful people, and your endemic sponsors who like to leak stuff anyway are sat there getting like cooked out of the situation. So they're just like rubbing their hands, ready to leak some stuff.
That's
so
true.
if a
They want a
drop of
really
information
popular
comes their way,
one little thing, and your Twitter account is just minted. Like you're set for life, you know.
There's 10K followers, easy. Well, okay, so I do agree. If Blizzard did somehow like leapfrog all these endemic orgs, as soon as they found out information, they would leak it immediately just to get the outrage going, right? So, yeah, you do have a point there.
it's going to be interesting whenever any of this information comes to light, though, to see actually what the plans are, how the combine is going to fit into it. That's still an utter mystery that I feel a lot of people are not really talking about, because Miro is still invited to the combine, guys, and he's currently in the best team in the world. So I don't know whether he's even going to go.
And he's the only person invited to the combine, as far as we know.
A one-man combine.
Ah.
I was so intrigued by the concept of a combine, because watching the League of Legends ones, it was like, man, there's so many cooler things you can do with a combine, you know, is when it comes to gaming. Like, you don't have to do like reflex testing and stuff, just do pickup games. But literally,
Well,
like, just have it like 2 days of pickup games and let people watch them, and it would be awesome. Like,
my issue with the combine is it feels like it's something that leads directly into a draft, which Monte Cristo's, he's been very like open about this. He's saying that Blizzard can't do this without a proper players union. So that's an ambulance.
well,
Okay.
also, how much money is it going to cost?
Take you away.
How much money is it going to cost to buy out all those contracts? Like, it's
A lot of money.
yeah. I mean, that's the whole and honestly, I think that's the whole reason everyone started shuffling so quickly, is because they were like, I want the most expensive players.
Yeah.
So that when Blizzard has to buy out my contract, I'm going to be very rich.
I'm making bank, and we're running away like bandits.
Yeah, well, because we've seen this happen before. We saw it with was it CGS, where they literally just came in and bought all their contracts out. They were like, these are our players now, and you would almost have to do that because these are legally binding contracts. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Bank.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. So who knows what they're going to do with the combine and any kind of selection process.
I would be surprised if they just let it be, but how do you walk back something like that? I mean, it was a pretty ambitious statement. I mean, you talk about them not announcing things until they have all their ducks in a row, but
That's the thing.
that was definitely the outlier.
They did at one point say they're still going through with the combine. Like, everything is still in order. We're still. I think that was Nate Nanzer actually in Korea. So I mean,
that would be sick. I mean, I want to see it. I still think it should just be pug games. I think that would be the funnest thing to watch. It's just like a ton of pro players in a big gym land somewhere, like big community land, just pugging for 2 days straight.
You know, awesome. I want to see Miro doing box jumps and reflex testing and all that stuff. I'm down. I'll watch.
You really need good reflexes to play Symmetra.
Yeah. No aim, no brain. Winston
main. Symmetra was a really bad example, but you get my point. I don't think that the same old, like, you don't really need aiming tests for an Overwatch League. Like, if it's all teamwork and problem solving and strategizing, then like possibly
send down with the Sudoku for 3 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. I think age is a less determining factor in Overwatch than it is in other games, so we're gonna see some really interesting stuff.
Whole cold cheese.
Whole cold cheese, yeah.
Well, Pure's like older than me, isn't he?
Old rotten cheese. No, I love Pure.
Pure's lovely. All right. Well, we're going to call it that for the week. We'll see everyone next week Back for more 12 o'clock news.